All right, how's everybody doing? Go ahead and get started here. Maybe get you out a few minutes early so you can enjoy lunch and have some downtime. So, my name is Preston McClellan. I met many of you, hope to meet more of you throughout the rest of the week. I run a company called Golf Space Collective. We're a marketing agency specializing in golf, so a bunch of golfers that also do all things creative. I spent about 7 years at PGA Tour prior to starting the company. I kind of worked at various levels of golf, mostly focusing on social media and modern digital marketing. So every year at these conferences, one of the sessions we'd like to have and have good feedback on is just kind of talking through how various associations are approaching event coverage and reaching various segments of the audience through that coverage. So this is the third year in a row we've done this session. It's been very interesting to see how content strategy has evolved, the equipment that's being used, the amount of resources. And I think we're kind of going through, a little bit of a shift of having it be just truly like event coverage, as if, this happened, this guy shot this person won this tournament, and more into the experience of playing into your events and humanizing the people behind the events as well. So we're gonna have a few slides of just kind of general best practices. It's pretty straightforward. And then I'm gonna talk a little bit about the work that my company does with the Texas Golf Association and the Legends Junior Tour. And then I'm gonna have 3 different associations come up and join me to talk through some of their content strategies. So we'll have Mass Golf, CDGA, and the New Jersey State Golf Association. As we're going through any of this, please feel free to ask questions as we're going along, especially when we get into the association-specific content. If you want to know how something was executed, the amount of time it took, the dollars involved, I think this is a great room to have those discussions. I tried to have of the associations, they're varying sized associations, right? So that I know that in the room, y'all's staffing setups from a marketing and communication standpoint vary greatly in terms of the number of people and what's realistic. So I hope to make this a little bit of an open conversation with some best practices. I just wanted you guys to know, please feel free to jump in and ask questions if you want to drill down anything. Don't feel like you have to save them until the end. Sound good? All right. I'm talking as slow as I can. I don't do well. This is like very slow. Obviously, just in terms of social media, I think we're past the point of everyone knowing social media matters. I think where we're at now is it's really gone from 5 years ago on social, there was a lot more user-generated content, and now people use social media in a way I feel like it's almost like television was 10 to 15 years ago. The vast majority of people on social are consuming only, and they're not actually posting themselves unless it's personal related, right? So when you're when you're thinking about your content at an association, you almost want to think about yourself as more of a media channel across platforms, and it's not just social content, it's content. And you want your audience to be able to, as they're scrolling through their feed, recognize your brand, have something that stands out. And the term I always like to use is thumb stopping. When you're scrolling on your feed with your thumb, what can I do that's going to make someone pause for a half a second to take that content in and do it a little bit deeper, right? And so the main reason we're doing that, expand reach, new golfers, enhance event visibility, and obviously at the end of the day, you want to drive membership and participation, right? At the end of the day, you guys want to retain golfers and get new golfers into your system. And social media is oftentimes the front door of that operation from a branding standpoint. So one of the things I like to talk to our clients about is that when someone encounters your brand anywhere, could be a sign, could be an advertisement, could be a radio ad, however you're out there in the market, one of the first things they're gonna go do is search for you on the platform of their choice. That might be Google, but it's more likely to be now Instagram or TikTok. There's a study that came out earlier this year that in Gen Z and younger millennials, over 40% of us don't use Google as their primary search platform anymore. They use Instagram and TikTok as their primary search platform. So when people are going out and researching the Chicago District Golf Association, they might Google it, but the first one they're going to go into Instagram. And so you want to make sure that your page there reflects the brand values and your offering just like you have on your website. So your grid on Instagram should be something you're constantly thinking about. The post you have pinned on TikTok, the tweet you have pinned on X, all of those things, because it's the front door of your brand, and that first impression, we all get that one chance to make a first impression. So this is kind of traditional side of things, and we'll get into less of the coverage side of things and more of the storytelling here in a little bit. It's just some basic stuff, right? I think we want to make sure we're driving pre-event coverage so it's not just out of nowhere this event is popping up. That's when you release your schedule at the start of the year, when the courses come out, doing course previews, maybe doing an interview on Zoom with defending champions for your biggest events, things that drive interest in the event ahead of time. Obviously, live coverage during events is going to vary greatly depending on your staff setup, and that's one of the things that we'll talk about with the association in the room. There are various approaches to that. You have a very small audience that's going to be actually interested in the scores of your tournaments, right? Let's be honest, most people that are following your associations aren't the ones that are going to be actually looking to see hole-by-hole coverage, but it is something that is valuable because live coverage breaks through, especially on Instagram if you're using a live feature and things like that. And then after the fact, the post-event highlights, not just highlights of golf, but highlights of the experience, highlights of the course, highlights of the volunteers, the things that made that event possible, and showcasing as many different types of people in your content as possible, right? Because we want golf, we want it to be more, we want the game of golf to be more diverse, and you guys obviously want more diverse membership, so we need to make sure it's not all white dudes, young, that are in your content, right? Making sure that you have content on your page so that people can see themselves in your content across a variety of demographics. And a lot of times, you have to really have a concerted effort to do that because so many of your events are the traditional male-focused competition events. So how can we kind of highlight other types of events? So in Texas, for example, they do a program called Fun Golf Days, where it is a tournament, yes, but the whole point is to bring someone with you that has never played in a tournament before, and there's drinks on the course, it's a much more casual environment. We make sure that we feature that content on the page as much as we're featuring the hardcore competition content, because most people are going to identify with golf as a leisure activity more so than a competitive activity. And so I think when you think about events, it's not just your big time competitive events, it's the events that your association is running. Just some basic stuff here, and we'll have examples to put to this here in a little bit, but obviously I think storytelling around people is at the end of the day the easiest way to lean into more in-depth tournament coverage. The people playing your events there's going to be stories there, right? That's going to require a little bit of pre-work from your team and teams to identify those people ahead of time and then to map out the game plan of capturing that content on site at a specific event. So one of the things that we suggest people to do is on their entry forms, two things: having a place for people to put their social media handles so you can know, so you can go do research on them ahead of time, and then having basically an open-ended text box of, do you have a great story or know someone in our association that has a great story? And basically giving people the opportunity to identify and self-report, like, hey, yeah, my brother or my buddy, had cancer last year, he beat it, he's back playing golf again. You can identify, throughout the course of the year, 5, 6, 7, 8 human interest stories like that, and then during your events where those people are playing, kind of couple the event coverage with the human coverage, you'll get a lot more content and a lot more engagement out of that as well. One other thing too, one of the things that does really well is agronomy type stuff and setup of golf courses, right? Like, golf is a beautiful sport. It's one of the reasons that people are attracted to it. You're on beautiful courses, and you want to showcase that through things like drone video photography, but even simple things like, hey, let's drop a GoPro on the guy who's cutting the hole as he goes out there. Let's showcase how the course is set up. Let's try some different types of content that might break through the traditional event coverage. But behind the scenes content is something that's very easy to implement. So just to reiterate some of the things I was saying before we get into some more specific examples, is humanize the game, right? Like, you have to show personalities through people, because golf is a sport, it's not a person. People want to connect with people. So finding those people within your associations that are the right fit for that. Community and effort, right? It takes a lot to put on a great event, and the volunteers and the staff members that are behind the scenes putting all that together. Oftentimes we tell their stories, do a quick interview with them, maybe stage several interviews together. People can identify with that because, hey, I have a full-time job too. You can find these ways to relate with people and build those deeper connections. Quick things on how I also use AI to help with this. And there's a session tomorrow I encourage you guys to go to about how to use artificial intelligence, and we'll do a little bit more on this. But if you're not using ChatGPT, you should. You should buy the premium subscription. It's $20 a month. ChatGPT is my best brainstorm buddy, is like I like to say, right? Like, it is very hard to create ideas in a vacuum, especially when you're a smaller staff. So a lot of times what we'll do is use ChatGPT as a thought starter, right? So this is just an example of, like, for some of the stuff we've done for the Texas Golf Association. So when you're working with ChatGPT, you kind of have to, like, hype it up and tell it that it's really good. So don't just put in a prompt and say, hey, you're the best marketer I've ever seen. And then it will actually, like, have an impact on how high quality that output is. But here's an example. Give me 20 social media content ideas for the Texas Golf Association, right? And then it'll generate those instantly. You pick ones that you like, and you can have it drill down deeper. I'm not saying that you copy and paste that at all, never do that, but it's gonna give you a starting point So you have a whole list of ideas that you can then tailor down to your brand and how to execute them. So here's another example, like 1 week content calendar from TGA. This was about 1.5 years ago when we were first kind of doing strategy. It just helps us kind of think through different content buckets and ideas, and then we'll go through all of these and kind of assign, all right, we have content on this already, we can edit this video, we can do a graphic, or hey, we need to go out and shoot this at the next event, whatever the case may be. And then I highly encourage you to also look into image generation for those of you that are shorter staff on graphic design. One of our clients is the Range Ghost team on the Live Tour. We can have a whole Saudi discussion at any time, but just to showcase what's capable, we pushed the boundaries of that brand a little bit, and these are all generated from DALL-E, which is Microsoft's image generation technology. Something that definitely is very, very worthwhile investigating for you guys. I'm happy to talk more specifically about that and one-on-one conversations for you all as well. All right, we're going to get some. Any questions? Sorry, I'll pause. Any questions on that? All right, cool. Here we go. This is association-specific stuff now. So, TGA, we're kind of in the process of pivoting, like I just mentioned. For the last 2 years, the main goal is to create awareness of the events because we want people to sign up for them, right? We want to fill the events. We want to showcase the membership that there are different types of events for younger developers, highly competitive, fun golf, team events, father-son, parent-child, all those types of things. And then showcase the courses, kind of like I mentioned earlier, the perks that come along with playing an event, the gifts that you get, the access to the practice rounds, things of that nature, and then providing live tournament coverage when it's appropriate. So for the state amateur, the state open, the women's amateur, those types of things. A couple of pieces of content over here we've just done really well. This is one I thought this is something a lot of associations could probably replicate. Kind of showed some fun facts about Trinity Forest, the golf course that was hosting the 150th Texas Amateur, and that post on Facebook did extremely well because it's a very digestible, like, oh, that's kind of cool. It's thumb stopping, it's random, it's different, it's just a little bit more engaging. Now, heading into next year, working with Greg Asher and his team, and I highly encourage you guys to talk with Greg. He's got a great view on how we're going to take marketing from golf specific to a little bit broader. And really what we're going to try to do is, like, on social, TJ's audience is overwhelmingly 18 to 34. And we have tried to reach other people, we just aren't. And that shows us that we need to lean into that demographic on social versus trying to find a demographic that doesn't exist on social. So what we're going to do in 2025 is really lean into the non-tournament content to attract those higher handicappers and less serious golfers. And so we're going to do a lot more at the fun golf events. We're going to do a lot more content that's not about the competitive side of the game, but like things like what's your favorite, what's your go-to drink order? What do you put in your transfusion? How do things of those natures that golfers of all abilities or golfers that don't care about their ability maybe able to relate to a little bit more. Now I wanted to highlight too, for those of you that have junior tours that you operate or that you work on, I think it's a great way to kind of build an audience that will eventually come over to main accounts. So we really had a lot of success on the Legends Junior Tour of showcasing the up and coming players, but then also the alumni of the tour. Obviously, LJT's had some pretty good alumni from the Gold Ball Tour, so Scotty Scheffler and Jordan Spieth. So we're able to lean into that. But I highly encourage you guys to leverage your junior tours for content and for audience development because they're going to be friends of these kids are going to be much more likely to follow your junior tours first. And if they can get you in the door that way, when they turn 18, 19, 20, it's a lot easier to migrate them over into your larger system as well. All right, that's enough talking from me. I'm going to bring up Rebecca and Nick from New Jersey State Golf Association to talk through a few things that they've been working on.
Yeah, so at the very base level, we collaborate with all of our champions as much as we can. Usually they all accept the invitation to collaborate, but that's kind of, our top recommendation is just to broaden the reach because likely a lot of our champions have like a big following. But Nick's going to touch on next slide a couple of examples
On the cloud feature too, like that's Instagram's a technical feature, but you can now add people in after the fact. So if your team's like super busy on site and you need to get a post out, and then like the next day you're like, oh, I found the champion's account. There's nothing that you can go back and do it after that.
So I think a big focus for us too is trying to do content that isn't necessarily tournament based. Maybe happening at a tournament, but it's not necessarily like John Smith shot 3 under today and now he's in the lead at at the first city amateur. So a couple things that we started with this year was very basic, like we called them like whiteboard questions, where we would have our intern actually go to the range before an event with a whiteboard question, just single out some random people, not necessarily people that we think are going to be on the run-in come day 3 or whatever. But 2 of the questions we did was, one, what would be your first seat walk-up song? And then what is your go-to order at the turn? We found that these did really well on social and did not take a whole bunch to kind of create. So just briefly, I'll show you a quick example of what would be your first.
Well, apparently they didn't hook up the sound, so we're gonna let Nick.
Yeah, basically, the gist of it definitely is we wanted to involve people, like I said, that aren't necessarily going to compete at the end of the day. It's something that's fun, definitely, isn't necessarily, play related or anything like that. And it's something that, like, somebody may see themselves in this, or maybe their friends may see themselves in this, and when they share it, they get shared to their audience, and that audience may not have had any prior engagement with us in the past. So it's kind of helping broaden our reach through something as silly like Riley is a pro from Canada. Well, she's now originally from Canada. She's obviously a woman playing in our Open, somebody different, somebody that's not necessarily you would expect to see in our tournament coverage, but she had El Canada as her walk-up song. Something fun, something that got some good response.
It really takes, like Nick said, limited time, not only to ask the player the quick questions so we're not really interrupting their pre-round routine, but to edit too.
Quick note too on that, I think only 2 of the people we featured in it actually made the cut. So it's not necessarily like go to the range and look at people with the horse swing, that's not the point of it. But just trying to get a different group of people that aren't necessarily in our coverage.
And just like on the note, like way y'all edited that video, having the little pop-ups from the songs, like very simple little tactics like that go a really long way in retention of attention. Because like you think the average attention span is, it's sadly low. We've come to a point, I think it's like 45 seconds of the average American's attention span. It's like 9 seconds for Gen Z, so good luck for the next generation. But having those little pop-ups in the videos where there's like stuff happening on screen to keep you there is a big deal. Because otherwise, especially like on social, a lot of times you watch stuff without sound on, and after 4 or 5 seconds, it's like, I'm doing the video. But if you have constant things hitting the screen, people tend to stick around a little bit longer.
There's like 4 to 5 seconds of each song playing throughout. That was the longest part, was picking on songs.
Yeah, so building relationships, we try to have a good relationship with our partners, clubs, the staff at the clubs. So a lot of the content we do focuses on those partnerships. A couple of the examples we have shows signage of our sponsors, flags, staff members, for example, like the grounds crew doing work.
Yeah, I know. You could probably play it without the sound at all.
Yeah, the second example shows a lot from our AM at Forest Hill.
Just like we put a lot of work into,
Displaying
making our brand out there and putting, our logo on things, and I think just being able to show people who you are, but also show things like your partners, they definitely appreciate that. It's not something that is necessarily expected, but I think it's definitely a boost that you can share, especially if you can share metrics with your partners or clubs or whatever after, that will help boost your relationship to show that, hey, this many people saw a video or shared a video with your signage and your brand on it. I think that's even more important necessarily than showing your own. So.
I think some partners appreciate the collaboration more than others, but either way, it's important to kind of get their name and brand out there.
Yeah. You guys just look a little bit. Obviously, you invested in drones and some high quality photos of photography and videography resources. And talk about just that process internally and how much that's paid dividends.
Yeah. So as a resident, we definitely try to, if it's possible, get to a course. For example, for most of our majors from this past season, we tried to either get there in the fall of last year or in the early spring. Where obviously it's a little tougher for New Jersey. What Union League National looks like in December is not what it's going to look like in May or June. So obviously we have to be a little more strategic in when we get to these courses, but I think if you can kind of be proactive in gathering content of specifically courses in your area, it's not, again, it's a little easier for New Jersey, we don't have to go too far, but if you can just have that banked, I think it really helps. Even we did some fall videos recently that were not tournament based or coverage based, just to try to keep people engaged with us, and we were able to just pull from drone footage. Drone footage pretty much always looks good, even if I'm not any kind of experienced pilot in the slightest bit. So that's always going to look good, and it's good to kind of create that bank of footage.
The other thing is, a lot of the clubs really appreciate us sending them that footage. They could use it on their website, they could use it on their social. They collaborate with us, so it's a good incentive for them to want to host, for us to go there, and it goes both ways.
Yeah. For anyone that's going to come to the breakout session at the end of the day, one of the topics there is going to be just around gear, camera equipment and all the various types of things that associations are using, so we can kind of share some best practices on what we're actually DJ2, all of those types of things. I think for any of you guys that are actually creating content, I think it'd be a very helpful discussion for you guys to do what everyone else is doing. Yeah.
So I know we talked about kind of how do we cover tournaments without covering tournaments, but something else that you can do. Obviously, you're going to have your traditional coverage of leaders and winners and things like that. What is nice if you have time that allows for it. I know it gets super busy in tournament season, but if you can provide some sort of pre-tournament coverage, doesn't have to be anything crazy. Obviously, we're working with the association. We know next week is the New Jersey Am. A lot of people don't necessarily have that on their calendar, so it's nice to kind of provide that reminder, whether it's the weekend before or the week before. More likely enough, we have an executive director, Kevin Purcell, who is super personable, so we were able to use him in a couple videos this year where he was able to play the 18th hole at our M site with a couple of really good players and just talk to them about golf, life, everything in between. If you haven't met Kevin yet, I'm sure you will by the end of the week. Shake your hands. But something like that is nice just to serve as a reminder. But then also during the tournament, it's important to stay kind of flexible. Obviously, like I said, you can have your traditional coverage. But what's a good rule of thumb is if you do have a bigger event, maybe a multi-day event, if you can pick one fun, I'll call it, piece of content that is different from your traditional, tournament coverage, and just execute that maybe on a day one when you don't necessarily have to be following the leaders up 16, 17, 18, whatever it might be. If you could pick one day to have a fun piece of content and go out in the morning, I think that's a good rule of thumb of changing your coverage a little bit.
If we had audio, I would say play the kids.
On the trending audio note here too, just something super tactical, but on Instagram, making sure you're keeping up with what sounds are performing well and figuring out ways to have your content fit those sounds. Obviously making sure you're set up appropriately as a career profile or business profile to have access to said audio. But it really does make a large difference when you try to piggyback off stuff that's already trending, and you have a lot more potential to reach non-followers within the Reels algorithm.
And even just for me, when I'm thinking about content that I'm creating, if I just scroll through your Explore page, a lot of times, what you interact with, a lot of our Explore page on the golf page is other golf, either associations or whatever it might be. I steal 95% of everything. Yeah. So I think just trying to at least steal in the sense that you get an idea of something you can do. So I think just staying up to date on that, and just like I said, setting aside 10-15 minutes a day to just scroll and see what's new and what's out there is super helpful.
Yeah, the scroll time, I was going to say, that's what I was about to say. I think, especially for the executive directors and folks in the room, making sure you do empower your younger staff to do that. They do need to actually spend an hour on Instagram a week scrolling for nonsensical content because it's creative inspiration. So in the middle of seasons when things get really busy, that can become something that gets overlooked. So I always encourage people when we do this, if I have an hour every week on Wednesdays blocked out to where I'm going to scroll through TikTok and Instagram religiously looking for various types of content and cycling and bookmarking links. And so I don't know if you use the bookmarking feature on Instagram, but if you guys have a team or for yourself, bookmarking feature is awesome. Then you can bookmark it and you create folders within Instagram. So you can have like a term coverage folder, you can have a graphics folder, and then when you ever need like a quick flip book of inspiration, you go into your saved bookmarks and have that ready to go.
Yeah, small note to that too, you can add team members to that folder. So like if I'm just scrolling on my own, like I don't have to switch accounts to then try and find whatever I was looking for. You can just easily save it and start collaborating.
Any questions for these guys? Thank you.
Yeah.
Steven from Max Golf now talk through 3 different things we're working on.
Yeah, so thanks for having us up here. One of the big things that we did in the off season was we tried to evaluate where are areas where we were gathering content, we had ability to do things, and really, like this session is, optimize what we were doing, what we had, and one of the spaces that we saw that was creating a bit more of long form content. So we're often in the business of quick dopamine hitting reels, things of that nature. But these, we have 3 different examples up here, but these 3 different examples were good ways to answer a lot of questions and check a lot of boxes that we were trying to check each year. So the first one I'll talk about is our signature event preview shows. And while there's no audio, and perhaps it'll be good if you just roll it while I'm talking, it might be a nice change of just staring at that for a while. But one of the things we did this year is, or I should say, all the things that I'm going to talk about are other people's ideas that I'm just presenting on, and our team is amazing. And I also understand that every association is different. I'm great friends with Joe from Rhode Island in the back, and I know that his staff and what he has for ability to do is not going to match with what we have here. So I encourage you to just take it as an example of different ways of thinking of things. So the first thing we have is our event preview show. And what we wanted to do here was take advantage and hype up the event. So obviously, you know, I was listening to No Laying Up in the off season, and they kept pounding on, like, if you want to make these signature events bigger, there needs to be live from, there needs to be this, that, and the other thing, and it kind of stuck with me. And then Nia, who you see on screen, she was with Kat last year, and they did it for our women's AM, for our women's newsletter. And then it just hit on me. I was like, we should just be doing this for everything. So we've got, as you can see in the bottom right, titles and FootJoy. So you're checking the box of a sponsored element, a 15-minute show of having them throughout the entire thing. It also goes to what everyone was talking about earlier of telling these stories of golfers. Yes, we want to talk about those that are going to be in contention, but we have an NFL player playing that's not going to make the cut. Here's a window for us to talk about him for 2 minutes. We had, on the AM, we had Molly Smith, a female, qualified for the 2nd straight year for the state AM. That's an awesome story. We don't want to rely on her making the cut to tell that story, so here's another 2-minute window where we're able to do that. The clubs, as we were talking about with the courses, site procurement is very difficult. Here's a window where we can go to the club. We were already going, like you guys do, going to get the drone footage in advance. So let's package up that drone footage. Let's hype up their club. They're going to then get this. They're going to be, even the Uber private clubs are excited when there's a 15-minute show about the event that's about to happen there. So able to check that box there. And then the other thing that we always look at, like, hard drive. We have all these years of footage, and we're like, such good stuff. Where else can we use it? Here's a great way of Rebecca Scholar. She plays at Virginia. She's past AM champion. All this footage, let's find a way to pour this in, while also hyping up the event. The other thing that we face, and I'm sure many do, coverage from outside entities don't exist anymore. I mean, some of you might have really good relationships, but in Massachusetts, newspapers aren't coming out, TV stations aren't coming out. I mean, here and there, but it's kind of on us to help hype this event up, and it's just elevating those 3 signature events. So we do it for our state open and our 2 AMs. So it's a great way that we found to spend 15 minutes talking on the production side. Legitimately, me and I just set up chairs behind our office at TPC and just talked for 15 minutes. And then we had a really talented group of Boatwright. We had 2 Boatwright members, or 2 Boatwright interns, and one of them was video specific. She just cut it up. We went in and tagged the different footage because she didn't know from past years, like who Rebecca Scholar might be. Handed it over to her, and she did it in less than a day. So, and we did that. So, again, I understand that not all of you are going to have that type of staffing and ability, but there's an opportunity and a window to use footage you already have, hype up the club that you're going to be at, help with this like procurement side of things, and another sponsorable element where we get to say X hours of watch content with your logos on it. So, good example there of beautiful time for a show.
And on just on YouTube too, like just having some of that search engine optimization too, right? It's going to go into the Google side of things since it's on YouTube, and having with the growth of YouTube golf and watching younger folks watching on YouTube, having presence there, so when people are searching for mass golf, there's something there for them to find.
Exactly. And 2 fun things that we learned from this is, you wonder, like, you're relying on just the number of views that you have on things, and we often get stuck in like, oh my God, that's the only thing that matters. But there was word of mouth, there was buzz on the ground of these different shows. We had one of our best male competitors, his dad is his caddy. He's like, I got something to say to you. Because, we're trying to hype it up and kind of give a preview of who we think might compete. And for the last decade, it's been a college kid that's won our state AM. So I said, as part of the show, I anticipate that it'll be a battle of college kids. It's 36 whole days for 3 straight days after 2 18-hole. And he's like, I don't like what you said. And of course, the final was 2 mid-ams, and his son was one of them. And, but it showed that they were watching and that they were consuming it. On the women's side, our champion this year was a past champion from a few years ago, Morgan Smith. I talked about how her sister Molly, who's one of our bright upcoming stars, and she almost made it through U.S. Open local qualifying, so she is a bona fide superstar, really. I had mentioned I think that she'd probably be, it's her turn to win. In her sister's championship winning speech, she said, I just want to also thank Stephen Handjack and Mass Golf for inspiring me. Don't ever forget that I'm a 2-time champion, blah, blah, blah. But there's another instance of them taking this in and it's showing that it's actually hitting the ground with those folks. So, fun stories there. The next thing, I think a lot of you are probably doing this, and I don't know if it necessarily fits the whole optimizing thing, but the live stream of our final match. We've been doing it. It was basically born because of COVID in 2020 when there couldn't be anyone at our sites. But from there, it's grown. And every time that I think in my mind, like, all right, has it run its course? The answer has been a resounding no. But again, going back to what all the clubs say, it's amazing when we meet with certainly the signature event clubs pre-event. They always want to know, so will you guys be doing live for this one, blah, blah, blah. And so it always comes back to that. But we've spent 5 years of 3 times a year doing this. And what we've come down to is just stick with what we do really good. So we do on Instagram Live, vertical. We've kind of got the whole system dialed in. And we've kind of tinkered with, should we try and go wide? Should we try and, we bought all this different camera equipment. Can we actually shoot it with a mirrorless camera and run it to a phone? And again, we're doing 6 hours of a 36-hole stream. None of that really worked, so we're just sticking with the cell phone, but we've dialed it in. So the best investment we made this year, I know you talked about, we're going to get geeked out with our gear stuff later, but the DJI mini mics have been the best investment we made all year. If you're doing any video stuff and you don't have those, I highly recommend it. One, they have amazing sound canceling technology, and as we all know, any of us that shoot out there, the wind at golf courses is the #1 killer of video. It has saved that from us this whole year. The other thing it can do is it can record remotely, so I'll get to that separately as we talk about. So the live stream, one of the big things that we got was It's always shaky, so we got a stabilizer. Of course, battery life is a challenge there. I can always talk to you offline on that. The other thing was the sound quality. Again, going to the wind, you're going 36 holes, you're uphills, downhills, you're trying to cover the phone and talk as you're what have you. Having the DJI mini mic, which plugs into the phone, sound canceling, it made for really good audio quality there. The last thing on this, it's really interesting, the amount of people that start streaming this. So we have a few examples of it. Go back to Rebecca Scholar. She won the women's AM 2 years ago. She had to get to college a little bit late because our championship match was when she was supposed to report to Virginia. Apparently in their team room, they had the whole thing streaming from there. We had one with a Georgetown player, same thing. And then this year we saw something new. The clubhouse started streaming it in the bar. These people, they want to come out and watch a little bit. They don't want to walk 36 holes, so they would have it in there. People would stop by at the turn, get a few drinks, watch in there, what have you. Off they go. And then I don't think Jesse's in the room, but our executive director, Jesse, his mom is a huge fan of the live stream. So much so that she came down to the tournament, sat down at the ninth hole, and just streamed the whole thing from there and saw as they would come make the turn and play the final hole. But just a few instances of these actually. It's nice that when you actually see it out there and you're not just relying on, like Instagram said, we had 1,500 people at one time watching and 12,000 over the entirety of it. So just a few examples there. And then the last one, if you want to hit play again, well, we can just have that going. This one was born from one of our staff members this year, was every shot from the championship match of the stadium. So again, we're like, hey, we've got 5 people on our staff and we've got 2 cameras and there's people playing. And he was like, what if we just film every single shot and chop it together? And as we were talking about earlier, YouTube golf, watching on YouTube has been a huge thing, whether it be, like I follow all the no laying up stuff. But these at least, our state AMs and opens have, at least in our world, great meaning. So it was a great opportunity to utilize the people we're going to have on staff, the equipment we had. And the other thing is going back to the beginning, without all this coverage from the outside, it's kind of our duty to tell the historical story of this. And if we have the ability to just capture this rather than a, one-page article on it, people can go back 10 years from now, 15 years from now, 20 years from now, and talk about the point in this match where guy hits it up against the wall, flips the club over left-handed, thinks about it, so on and so forth, ends up chipping in at his home club, was 3 down, flipped the match, goes on to win, and it was all great fun. But again, it goes back to the historical side of things, and the club reached out after the fact, and we had no idea what was going to come of this numbers-wise, so we put it out there, and it blew us away. So it's now at, I think, 13,000 views on YouTube, which for us is phenomenal. I don't know if that would be good for a lot. I would assume so. So with that, we just continue doing it. But what it is, of course, as you can see, it's just every shot. We had every camera, and what our staff did is they just kind of leapfrog. One person was shooting, the next person would jump up ahead, get up by the green, and then they would just keep leapfrogging each other to get every shot. On the audio side of things, to make these good, you kind of need the audio element. It goes back to our live stream with the DJI mic. It recorded the entire thing, and it can record like 15 hours worth on one card. So Rich from our staff who cut this together just took all the audio from the live call, swooped it in there, and it turned out wonderfully. So a few examples of what we're doing. Again, very, very much on the long form side, not on the day-to-day event side, but things that we saw great success with, things that we're gonna hopefully grow on, especially on the sponsorship side. Good ability to show like, hey, this one's an hour long, but the hours watched on the YouTube side is really great. So a few examples there, and if anyone has any questions afterwards or details, let me know. Happy to talk through it.
Any questions for Stu right now?
For post-production, how long did it take for the every shot?
That would probably be a couple, 2-3 days, I would say, if I had to guess.
Do you have any tips for organizing the media to make sure you can kind of keep track of all the shots and
So luckily with that one, it helps that, so Rich on our staff, very much a golf golf nerd like myself. I say that as a term of endearment. But so he knew, and with that, it's timestamped, so everything is in order. So that was actually really easy versus like a post-event interview where they go to talk about a chip in on 7 and then you're trying to sort there. So that one was actually easiest because everything is chronological.
There's a good question there just in terms of like digital asset management, something that as all of you continue to invest more into content, you're going to have hours and hours and hunting out all these terabytes of footage and things. And if you're not keeping up with naming conventions and files over time, you will have all this footage, you don't know where it is. So that's a conversation I'm happy to drill down. We use a couple of different platforms that have like AI built into it, like we can auto tag things and also having file names and things, and we can actually search like metadata, so it's like a Google-based search versus like a Google Drive type of thing. They're generally not that expensive, but it's definitely something for you guys that are going to invest in content to have some sort of a digital asset management strategy, so you are keeping it all. It's a good call out for sure.
Steve, with the sit down, the one that you showed, you're saying 15 minutes on YouTube.
Yep.
Eyes are basically all 15 minutes. Like how much?
No, naturally, I mean, you're going to get a dip at some point. I think it probably levels out about half of that, watches all the way through.
That's hours long. Like YouTube, like one of the metrics on YouTube is like the sum aggregate number of hours that everyone has watched. So like, you watch 3 minutes and then 37 other people watch 3 minutes, the collective of that. And that's showcasing that there's interest over time and people are being retained. It's less about someone watching the whole show and more about them sticking around long enough to kind of get a touch point with the brand. So like to your point, very few people are probably gonna watch all 15 minutes of that show. But if you watch 4 of it, 3 of it, you're gonna get enough of a sense of who this tournament is, and you're gonna have like a little bit deeper connection with the brand this tournament.
And to that point, too, YouTube, I mean, you have to have 30 seconds, right, for it to count as a view. So it's true views versus, I mean, as much as we love when the Instagram number is through the roof and it's a quick scroll by, it's a bit, yeah.
Yeah, view on YouTube is 30 seconds, the view on Instagram is 2 seconds. So your views on Instagram are really a vanity metric, in my opinion, because someone could accidentally stop and barely scroll and still count as a view. So YouTube views is a much higher quality engagement. So YouTube is something we are trying to get more people to do. It just requires a little bit more resources from the production standpoint. Perfect. Thanks, sir. All right, Casey. Finish us out strong here.
Hi everybody, I'm Casey from the Chicago District Golf Association. Lots of good stuff so far. I think it's been shared by everybody, but wanted to kind of take you through 3 of our points of emphasis for this year and new initiatives that we were trying. So the first one on the left is we really wanted to step up our general graphics game. Previously, we would create a lot of stuff in Canva. It would kind of vary from event to event and things along those lines. But what we wanted to try to do is create a consistent feel across all of our different championships. So we actually partnered with a third-party graphic designer who we collaborated with her to figure out maybe 10 different categories of templates that we wanted. And then from there, we were able to modify them on an event-by-event basis. So here you can see 2 of them. We had kind of a single round type graphic there with the stroke play medalist. We had a champion graphic there on the left. And we were able to kind of customize those for each event with the logos in the lower right corner of the event and the club. And then some other examples of the templates we used were even outside of our championship. She developed templates for us for sharing magazine articles, for spotlighting our weekly radio show, who the guests were going to be. So it really helped us just not only elevate the look on our pages, but it was also just helped from an efficiency standpoint of knowing that we had these templates going in. We would spend a little bit of time before each championship, customizing them, and then that way, when we're on site, it's more of just dropping in a photo and updating the numbers and the names as opposed to trying to create something completely from scratch. So we're in the process of starting to brainstorm with her for what we might be able to do differently for next year. I would say don't be thrown off by the prospect of using a third party. There's a lot of freelance graphic design people out there that this is a passion for them. They might do it on the side. You may even be able to find someone from a local college or school that is very proficient in this type of stuff. So in general, we felt like it really helped elevate our overall look and feel presence on social media. Vertical video. So this was honestly one of the things we took away from this conference over the last couple of years, and stuff that Preston has taught us is, pretty much every video that we shot in the past was more strictly for YouTube, horizontal. And if we were to upload something to Instagram, it would essentially just be uploading that same file, right? It's not optimized for social media. So we really went into this year placing emphasis on vertical video at our championships, at our various events, and we had really strong results with it in terms of views, engagement, etc. So what we used it for was a couple of different areas. So this one that's an example here, in the spirit of kind of utilizing the early days of the championship or even the practice rounds, we mic'd up a couple of our more engaging players who we knew would be good on camera and we knew had a strong social media presence. We mic'd them up during their practice round for just 2 or 3 holes, cut it down to 1.5 minutes in length and kind of uploaded it as a walk and talk type video. You can see there it got some pretty good engagement. There was a lot of comments on there and things like that too. So that was definitely one of our highest engagement videos of the year on social. We would also use it just for kind of like our daily sort of recap videos. We still did a more traditional kind of end of championship long form interview with the winner. But what we would do on day 1, day 2, day 3, we would put the prominent individuals on camera, ask them maybe 1 or 2 questions, get a couple of highlights from them over the course of the round. And again, keep those under that 90-second threshold and upload those. That way we had a consistent video presence over the course of the whole championship, as opposed to just the final recap video at the end how to go on YouTube. So this didn't completely replace our more traditional video. Like I said, we still did the interviews at the end of the championships. We also expanded our ability to kind of do feature story type videos outside of the realm of championships. But one thing I would note with that is pretty much with all of those, we would still cut a vertical version to upload to Instagram and TikTok, and then direct people to the full version if they wanted to see that. From an execution standpoint, echoing what Steven said, the DJI mics were what we use for the walk and talk, and then even just our interviews afterwards. They're wireless, so it's really easy to get set up and everything along those lines. And then from a filming perspective, we would just use our regular Canon camera. At first, we would just start by holding it like this, but then we had a monopod, and we were actually able to find a little kind of adapter that would let it sit on there vertical, which that helped stabilize it and things like that. So high engagement with those. And then lastly, going back to what we were talking about with building in that scrolling time and making sure that you're keeping up with the different trends that are on social media. Our team, Tim and Jacob, do a really good job of that. They're the young guys who stay on with the trends. I'm the old guy who just comes up and talks about what they did. These were 2 examples of things that we had seen on social media. So the one on the left is the open or reveal trend, where we were able to set it up in Photoshop where the 4 center images make one cohesive image on Twitter, but then when you open up each of those, they're vertical files with 3 different images on there. And then this one on the right was taking advantage of how on Instagram, if you hold the carousel and scroll, it goes through all the photos. So this was a 10-sequence shot of the guy who ended up winning the state am. Starting his follow through here, going through making contact, creating a huge divot, and going through the follow through and things like that. So that one was just kind of a one-off post. We also did it with a guy who was leading after the first round, but then didn't really do much after that. But even still, that as kind of a standalone post, even though it didn't really, at the end up having much to do with the overall results of the championship, it still ended up producing some pretty high engagement. So execution with those, honestly, it was a lot of just kind of like trial and error from my guys here. Inevitably at championships, right, we end up with kind of a little bit of downtime where, you've already got kind of the photos you need, you've got the videos you need, and you're sort of just waiting for things to finish up and waiting for the morning wave to finish and the afternoon wave to start. So we were able just to kind of play around with it while we were sitting in the clubhouse and get it to the point where we were comfortable with it. And then once you do kind of get that initial Photoshop template set up, it's much easier to go from there. But Again, can't emphasize enough how important it is just to look at what other golf associations are doing, brands are doing, and try to mimic it to the best we are doing.
There are really no new ideas on social anymore, so we're all copying everyone, and it's totally okay. So, invitation's the most sincere form of flattery, and I think that's very applicable to social. Yeah. Any questions for Casey before we wrap up? Perfect. Thanks, sir. Perfect. So the only thing I'll say is just like the trend side of things. Highly encourage y'all to keep up with that and empower the younger folks that are working for you to come to you with ideas. For example, literally I saw about an hour ago before the session, Instagram just announced a feature that where your followers can actually add posts or add photos to your post. So I have no idea how that's going to work, but I literally just saw it, and that's something that we're going to test out for sure. So making sure, to your point, build that scroll time in, build the creative time in because it will pay dividends, and try stuff and learn from each other. So I highly encourage you guys to come to the breakout session this afternoon and drill down on some of these topics, but I know the only thing between you and lunch and fresh air, so I appreciate everyone's time.